wow, what would that represent in the world? It started out as that, and then when my grandfather passed away in 2022, I got really quiet. And because of him passing away, I had to figure out, like, if I even wanted to do music again. So I was kind of already starting the process of Roram when I was working on Mirror, after Mirror came out. And when he passed away, I got really quiet. I had nothing to say. I didn't want to sing. I still had gigs that I was contracted for. But I had to show up, and I didn't want to be there at these people's weddings and all this other stuff. But it was one of those things where, like, it was the pressing through that kind of helped me get through those situations, and me having to figure out if it was something I still wanted to do at all, because my grandfather to me was voice, if that makes sense, and my family. He was the voice in our family. You know, he was the foundation. He was the beginning between him and my grandmother. You know, and they both can sing. My grandmother plays the keys, and she also is a singer as well. And it starts with them for us, you know, and it trickled on down to their kids and down to the grandkids and so forth and so on. And so I had to stop and think, like, what is my reason anymore? If they're all going to die, if everybody I love is going to die, what is the point of me doing this now? And then I had to I cleared my throat for you, just so you know. And then,
I was wondering.
And then I had to, once I found my reasons again, like, my reason became, okay, my grandfather believed in this. He believed in me before I even started doing this. He saw this before I began to do what this artistry is today. My whole family. And I said, I have to keep going for his name's sake, if nothing else.
Right.
You know, and then my grandmother passed away after him. And after my grandmother passed away, my aunt, she's really my mom's first cousin, but we call her my aunt because, you know, your parents' first cousins. We call them like
they old enough to be your uncle.
Yeah, we call them my auntie and uncles, but they're really she's really technically my second cousin. But my Aunt Vera, she passed away. And that's Tiara's mom. Tiara is my second cousin. She's also a movie producer. That's in our family. She produced a movie called Heavy and Heavier. And I just want to shout out to all of my family because we have really been struggling.
I know that one.
This time, and she did that while grieving.
Okay.
So our family had to keep going for our family that had transitioned on, and it wasn't easy. And so I had to refine who I am in grief now. And so all of the music started to change. I bought music and was like recording music and was like, this don't work for me no more. This is not who I am anymore. I don't feel, not that I don't feel the same, but I don't perceive it the same.
Right.
So I still feel the same. Like, okay, yeah, that's true, but there's also, if you move to the left a little bit, you're gonna see just a little bit more of the room. And now I see this.
Okay.
You know, so that's what grief did for me. It kind of made me step back, get a little closer to the mirror, and then step back and see what, because if you stand too close, you're only gonna see what you can see. But if you stand a little further back, you can see a little bit more, you know, and that's what grief did to me. It made me go inward then outward. And after I went inward and had to rediscover who I was as a human being now, because I had to figure out who am I without these people in my life now. And then after I thought I was figuring it out, then in 2023, last year, my first cousin dies. Daniel Jones. And okay, give me a second.
Take your time.
Take your time.
And that wasn't like a easy thing for us either. So it's just been one of those things where, like, who are we? These are people that has been a part of my life since I was born. You know, like, I only know the world with them in it. You know, what is this life without them in my mind? And then after he passed away, his older brother passed away, which is another one of our first cousins, Felipe. So we have just been like going.
It's kind of like you. It sounds as if, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds as if you're saying this project is more so for you than anything. That's kind of what
it is, but it's more so for me. It's about the grieving Christian. I felt like there is not a really any representation of music out there for the Christian that is grieving over the mother, the father, their spouse, their children, their friends, their family members.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Like, I feel like there's not representation out there. And not to I'm not coming down on the church. I'm not saying it in that regard.
You're not saying
what
church
I am
is
saying
whack?
is I feel like we need to acknowledge the fact that we are very passive about like death.
Having an honest conversation about true
Yeah,
feelings as a human.
we're very passive about it. What's to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord, and it's like.
Okay, how many times we gonna quote that though?
Yeah,
It's like, yeah, but this hurt right now.
Right?
You know what I mean? Or, we don't grieve as the world. And that's true. Because if they believed in the Lord the way that we know them to believe in the Lord, then we know where they're going. But it's at the same time, there is a step before you get to that step.
Right.
That step of like acceptance, that step of like, how could this happen? That steps of like, I'm going to miss them.
Anger.
None of that is spiritual.
Anger,
all of that.
Yeah.
None of that is spiritual. All of that is carnal stuff. We have to deal with that first. The spiritual side of it is what honestly keeps us like from breaking all the way down like we could or should for some of us. But that carnal side constantly comes up. You know, we constantly think about it. I mean, I'm constantly thinking about when Jesus cried when Lazarus died.
Right.
You know, there are many discrepancies about why Jesus cried.
Yeah.
We don't. I feel like it's perspective. I mean, I've heard that Jesus cried because of the people in the room
They
not
didn't
believing.
believe him, yeah.
And then I've heard people say that Jesus cried because Lazarus was his friend.
Yeah.
Right.
You know? And whatever those reasons are, my thing is like, okay, he cried now, but then he rose them up later.
Right.
My thought process is when it comes to death and grieving is that it doesn't feel good before you get there, but there is something at the end of it. You know, we do rise above this. So we are feeling this way carnally, but we do rise above it spiritually.
Gotcha.
So that is the way that I've just been trying to really accept, process. Well, let me tell you that. Process, accept. You know, state exactly what it is that I'm feeling. God, I'm feeling angry today. I wish this didn't happen. I wish this could have been. I mean,
Wow.
and we all know that we feel like it's some other people that we feel like could have went before. You know, so it's like, well, why did you choose this? Yeah, you know, we hear it all the time when we back in the day when people be like, you got those people jumping the cast like, Lord, it should have been me.
It should have been me.
And then when it's somebody close to you, you really do feel like, no, this should, because I do remember when Daniel died, all I could think to myself was like, no, God, you could have really took me.
Yeah.
Like, I remember posting it and everything.
You could,
because I was just like, if you would have took me, at least the impact that my cousin had on this world, that most of the world would not be feeling this way. You don't have a select few people who got to deal with their emotions when I die. So yeah, I think you can handle that. You know, that's how I felt.
I'm going to say you could have took that white lady that cut me off on the freeway.
She was somebody's mother, I'm sure. So
what they got to do with me?
Could took that
What they got to
Karen.
do with me?
You know,
But isn't that crazy how we feel like, oh, what you just said, you could have took me. What I just heard was Daniel had a lot to offer people, and if you took me, it wouldn't hurt people so much. That's what I just heard.
That's
but
how I felt. That's how I felt.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's not how I feel today.
Okay.
That's
Because I was
how
about to
felt.
say, sir.
I already knew you. Because
Sir,
people
let's
did come
rewind
for
that.
me. They did come for me, you know, and I was.
We were feeling
But
it.
honestly, it wasn't until because I will talk about this later in the interview.
That's fine.
I was working on a song for another promo for something else that I'm doing that's coming out this year. And that song is called Breathe. And in writing that song, just like the promo video for the song for the album, both of these songs are not songs that are going to be on the album. They're just songs that I put out to promote the album and what I'm getting ready to do next.
Gotcha.
And this particular promo song is called Breathe because I started to look at death in a way where like, well, why do we look at it as if like we are taking, like we're no longer breathing anymore. I've learned that like in this life, we're suffocating. The song is kind of like a direct song about my cousin Dan. And I looked at it like, you know, we all have our issues that we deal with, our demons that we have to fight. Some of them bring us down sometimes, and the Lord lifts us up, and He defeats them, and then sometimes ourselves go back to it, and so forth and so on, and He keeps defeating them. And we all have our issues that we deal with, but we're suffocating on this side. Because we're losing time as we're on this side. Eternal is on the other side.
Right.
So I learned that like, okay, we're suffocating on this side, so eventually we have to breathe. And breathing is when we take the last breath on this side, but breathe on the other side. And so it kind of took the sting of death.
I see that.
Off of like for me. I started to look at it like we gotta breathe. My cousin had to breathe. My grandfather had to breathe. My aunt had to breathe. These people were, some of them were suffering physically, and then some of them were suffering mentally. Like, we all have to breathe. At some point, we have to breathe.
And that's why we say
Which
rest.
Is that internal.
That's why we say rest.